Hi, I'm Dave and welcome to this red cloud photography video tutorial. In this episode we're going to look at the rules of composition, the things that will make your photos really stand out from the crowd. So the first thing we'll look at with composition is the rule of thirds. This is about not placing your subject always in the centre of the frame, but actually dividing the frame into an imaginary grid of 9 squares and placing the subject on one of the intersects of one of those squares. This gives a much more pleasing image to the eye. So let's take a closer look at the rule of thirds. I'm going to take a picture of the hall up there and I'm going to put the hall right in the centre of the shot. There we go. So looking at it, yeah, it's a pretty average picture really. What I'm now going to do is actually move the hall over slightly so that it's sitting on one of the intersects of the rule of thirds, and then we'll see what the picture looks like. There we go, we've got a much nicer composition, it feels more balanced, and we've got a nice shot of the sky. We've also caught a little bit of the moon, and we've got the tree to the side of the hall, and it actually brings out the presence of the hall in a much more natural manner. In this image of the hall itself is placed right in the centre of the frame, and also the foreground is really sort of going across just below centre. So in this image of the hall itself is placed more to the side of the picture on one of the intersects of the rule of thirds, but also the foreground has dropped a little bit, which again fits in with the rule of thirds. This brings a much more balanced composition of the hall with the sky and the clouds and the moon in the background. The horizon line plays a key part in the rule of thirds, whether we're talking about horizon on the sea or the horizon on land. Ideally, the horizon should be at one of the two intersects going horizontally across the grid so that you get either 1/3 land, 2/3 sky, or conversely 2/3 land, 1/3 sky. As you can see in this picture, the land is covering 2/3 of the image and the sky 1/3. Whereas in this picture, the land is covering 1/3 of the image and the sky 2/3. In this picture, the sea is covering 1/3 of the image and the sky is covering 2/3. Whereas in this picture, the sea is covering 2/3 of the image and the sky is covering 1/3. Of course, the rule of thirds actually isn't really a rule. It's a guideline. It's there to give you an idea of balanced composition. But there are times when you can be much more creative and go and break it. And really it's about exploring the image and what you're trying to portray. Stick to the rule of thirds where you can, but don't be afraid to break it. In this image, we see the horizon of the sea and the sky going straight across the centre of the picture. But actually the image works really well because of the symmetry that this provides with the reflection of the boat's masts in the water. The rule of thirds can be used to really enhance any photograph that you take, from your holiday snaps to your really good arty shots. What we got here, I've set up Lee in front of the lake. It's really mystic, a really nice atmosphere with the island and the trees behind it. And I'm going to plonk Lee right in the centre of the frame and take the first shot. So here we go. Okay, ready, Lee? Okay, it's a standard holiday photo. Lee's just standing right in the middle of it, and we'll have a look at it in a minute. What I'm now going to do is ask Lee to move over just to the side slightly, and that will allow me to put him on one of the intersects of the rule of thirds, and that will give a much more pleasing composition. So here we go. Lee, if you just move slightly to your left. That's great, thank you. There we go. And yeah, that's a much better shot to the eye. Okay, we'll have a look at these now. The subject in this image is standing right in the centre of the frame with an island growing out of the top of their head. And really it's just a snap of the subject, whereas it could be greatly enhanced by actually incorporating the background into the photograph. So if we have a look at the next image, we see Lee moved slightly over to the left and the island now actually being part of the photograph itself. And if you look where Lee's standing, it's on one of the intersections of the rule of thirds, which really gives it a pleasing composition to the eye. One vital technique for composing your images using the rule of thirds is pre-focusing. When pre-focusing, I'm actually focusing originally on the subject that I want as part of the picture. So in here, I'm focusing on Lee. I'm semi-depressing the shutter, I'm half depressing it, which locks the focus on Lee. Then I'm moving the camera around to reframe the picture as I actually want the frame of the picture to look. So one thing that we can use to really enhance the composition of our pictures is something called lead-in lines. So this is where we've got a frame and we're looking up this pathway and we've got this lovely avenue of trees, and we can use that to really lead the eye into the centre of the picture. So I've set my camera and it's quite low, and I'm bringing the lines out from the corners of the frame, and ideally if somebody's wandering down the picture, the lines are going to lead into them and they become the focus of the eye with the photograph. So I've just got somebody coming down now, so let's just grab a shot. There we go, that's cracking. So what we've got is a really nice picture that goes that way, and the eye is just drawn to the person that's coming out of the mist up that end of the frame. So let's have a look at that picture. So looking at this image, we see how the pathway is coming out of both corners of the image at the bottom, leading our eye to the subject coming out of the centre of the image. This effect is enhanced by the avenue of trees, which also lead to that same point. Lead-in lines go to something that we actually call the vanishing point. This effect is really useful for photography to create a nice composition. It allows our eyes to move through the image that we've created. The vanishing point may lead just into infinity, or it could have a subject placed there. One way to improve your composition is to think about where your subject is in the frame and what their motion is going to be. So I've set up a picture here where I've got the hall in the background shrouded in the mist, and a nice path coming down through the scene, creating a leading line. What I'm going to do is get Lee to walk through the frame. I'm going to take two shots. I'm going to take one of him walking into the frame and one of him walking out of the frame, and then what we'll do is we'll have a look at the two shots together and decide which one we think gives the best composition. So let's take the shot. Lee, do you want to start walking down? So Lee's coming through the frame now, and he's on the left hand side of it, and I'm placing him on a rule of third and taking the first shot. And as he walks through, he's walking out of the right hand side of the frame now, so I'm taking the second shot. There we go. Let's have a look at the pictures. In this first image, we can see how the subject is walking into the frame from the left and has a sense of space in front of them, as this is where they're heading on their walk. And that is actually a really nice way to get the composition to show that sense of space and the subject of the image. In this image, it feels to me as if the subject has already moved through the frame, we've missed the action, and they're coming out the far side of it. And really, it's just not as pleasing an image as the previous one. Another useful tool we can use in composition to try and enhance the final image is a technique called framing. So here we've got a really lovely glade. The mist is just starting to clear and the sun's coming through. We've got the sunlight streaming through the trees, and in the middle we've got this enormous tree stump, and I'm going to use that as a centerpiece for my photograph. But to actually really enhance that, I'm using the trees around it and the canopy to create a frame around that tree stump and actually really set that off on its own to stand out in the picture. So let's grab this shot now. There we go. And then what we'll do, we'll have a look at the picture and we'll see how the trees and the canopy frame around that centerpiece of the tree stump. So as described, when you look through this picture, you can see the large tree stump in the clearing with the sun filtering through the trees and the mist. But also you can see the fact that that whole image is framed by the two trees to the side using their trunks, and also the canopy of the branches over the top, which actually frames the stump beautifully. When setting up a shot with a large object in the distance and trying to take a nice long landscape, it can be a useful point of composition to have something in the foreground to give you a sense of scale of the object that you're really trying to focus on. So in this picture of Woollerton Hall here, I've got the hall there nicely framed in the background, but I'm including this statue as part of the shot so that the statue in the foreground gives a sense of the size of the hall. So let's take that picture now. There we go, and the statue itself in the foreground, and it's beautifully gazing at the hall, gives a real sense of the scale of the size of the thing behind it, which is a really good tip for composition. This image really does show how something in the foreground can bring out the scale and grandeur of, say, a building like the hall in the background. But also, what's really great about this image is the way that the statue appears to be gazing through the mist as the hall, hauntingly almost, comes out of the mist in the background. We're here in Woollerton Park on a really misty, atmospheric morning. I've set up a shot here where we've got a nice scene with the mist and some trees just coming out of the mist. But in itself, it's actually a fairly bland shot. So what I've done is I've positioned my tripod such that I've got, remembering my rule of thirds, I've got a nice big red phone box sitting in the shot. And that will really enhance the colour of the shot. So set it up, and I'm going to take the shot now. There we go. And if I'm really lucky, I'll hang on for a little bit and we might see somebody come by. A cyclist in a luminous jacket would be absolutely fantastic. That would really set the shot up perfectly. In this image, where we've got a fairly bland background with the trees just standing out in the mist, we've used the colour of the telephone box and also the luminous jacket of the cyclist to really stand out from the background and create a real point of interest for the picture. Here are some more examples of really good composition. So I really hope this has been useful to help you frame and create your images to help give you the best possible impact for them. Have a look at our website to look at more tutorials and find out about some of our great courses. Hope to see you on one soon.